Diddy's lawyer arrested bribing judge, threatening witness. Kash Patel confirms Obama on Blacklist. The courtroom air was thick, not just with tension, but with truth finally clawing its way to the surface. David James sat at the witness stand, not in a suit, but in silent defiance. His gaze met the judge's. The silence stretched like a taut wire. "I was Diddy's assistant," he began, "from 2007 to 2009. A murmur rippled through the spectators. Cameras blinked red like watching eyes. The defense shuffled. Teeny Garagos, Diddy's longtime lawyer, smirked from his seat, already preparing to strike. "But this isn't about music," David continued. "This is about survival." He detailed the impossible hours, 20-hour days, relentless demands, security watching his every move. The phrase echoed in his head, still haunting. "You know what rhymes with tired fired?" That's what Bonds, the lead enforcer, told him one night when David dared to ask for a proper break. No paid leave, no overtime. No holidays, just orders. And surveillance. "I wasn't allowed to say no," David said. "And when I did, I was slapped." Gasps. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. The blow had come from Diddy himself. It wasn't the only one. The courtroom stilled as David described a night in Miami. Diddy was furious over missing drugs. David tried to explain. That's when the punch came. Not from an angry artist, but from a man used to absolute control. Garagos objected. "Irrelevant." "Overruled," the judge said. David went on. He spoke about Cassie, her cries behind hotel doors, her dependence on Diddy for shelter music safety. He had her exactly where he wanted her. That's what he said. The room listened. David described being sent to fetch drugs under his own name. Sometimes it was ecstasy, sometimes prescription painkillers. They'd pay me back, but I'd have to use my own credit card first. "And did you feel safe?" the prosecutor asked. "No," David said. "I felt trapped. More than once I thought I might die in that job." He paused, looked over at Garagos, especially when his lawyer started threatening me. Garagos leaned forward. "Excuse me, you heard me," David said. "You said I'd never work again, that you'd ruin me, that I'd be blacklisted in every city, every label." The judge tapped the bench. "Stick to facts, Mr. James." David nodded. "The fact is, I was being silenced. Through fear, through lawsuits, through backroom threats." He looked up. "But I'm done being silent." Part 1 ended not with drama, but with something far more chilling, a list. David pulled a page from his folder. "These are the names Diddy said were off limits, untouchables, political allies. The ones who'd never be exposed." He handed it to the court. One name stood out. Barack Obama. The gallery erupted, but David was calm. "That's just the beginning," he said. The courtroom's marble floor carried echoes that didn't fade easily. David James, once a silent fixture in hip-hop's elite world, now stood beneath glaring fluorescence and sharper eyes. His voice, even when steady, rang like a blade. Not sharp from anger, but precision. The silence that followed his words was more threatening than shouts, and everyone knew why. He had lived it. "Your Honor, what you're about to hear isn't gossip. It's a timeline. It's reality." James recounted calmly yet clearly the calculated chaos within Diddy's inner circle. He detailed early mornings with Roscoe's fried chicken, endless nights in shadowed recording booths, and prescription pills labeled under his own name. But that wasn't the worst of it. His voice dropped, and so did the room's temperature. "I was told almost daily to stay in my lane. That tired rhymes with fired." Security staff like Uncle Paulie Bonds and others weren't just enforcers, they were silencers. The kind that reminded you your body might be found in a place no Google map recognizes. He controlled everything. James continued. Music, women, movement, even thoughts. Keisha Cassie, Kim Porter, and others became part of a rotating cast in a tightly curated image, but behind the velvet rope was a darker routine. Cassie wasn't free. He said she was styled, fed, kept, and more disturbingly surveilled. The prosecution displayed footage from a 2008 birthday event, muted but visceral. In it, Diddy danced. Behind him, James moved trays of drinks and pills. The camera tilted just enough to show a gloved hand passing a folder. A red one. Vault 7. The name surfaced like a bruised memory. It had been buried for years, allegedly a covert operation kit, media control dossier, and judicial leverage playbook rolled into one. But this wasn't some spy novel. It had signatures, names, politicians, Senator Tom Tillis, Senator Lindsey Graham, Senator Mitch McConnell. James didn't say they were guilty, he said they were seen, mentioned, invited, and most damningly documented. The folder had guest lists, event footage, NDAs, everything. But we weren't supposed to read it. We were supposed to fear it. He had once tried to refuse. One late night on Star Island, after Cassie was found crying, post-dinner, James suggested they report the incident. Combs' lawyer, Taney Garagos, responded. He told me, and I quote, "This isn't a court. This is a kingdom, and you're a peasant trying to file a complaint." That night, James' contract was quietly edited. His access card was revoked. 2 days later, bonds arrived at his apartment unannounced. He patted my girlfriend's purse. He searched the laundry hamper. He said, "We're looking for trust." David's tone didn't rise, but it chilled. The court was shown a polygraph session. James' body wired like a suspect answering yes or no to thefts. He never saw questions he barely understood. And when he passed, he was told he looked too confident. Taney Garagos leaned in. "Do you remember how the tapes were stored?" James nodded. "There was a temperature-controlled room in the LA compound. We called it the crypt. Footage files favors. If Diddy ever went down, the crypt was designed to take half the city with him." The judge cleared her throat, but the silence didn't clear. Pam Bondi, now part of the independent evidence review, stepped forward. Her fingers covered in pale pink polish slid a USB drive across the table. "Unsealed this morning," she said. Footage played, not of Cassie, not of James, but of a dinner event 2013. A familiar senator laughing, a woman whispering. Then another hand appeared with a manila envelope. 2 minutes later, Diddy shakes his head. No audio. Just a nod. Bondi paused it there. The courtroom exhaled. "You saw it. We all did. That envelope was payment not in cash, in compliance." James, standing again, fixed his eyes on Garagos. "You threatened me. You said I'd never work in this industry again. You were right, but you forgot one thing. A pause. A breath. I never wanted back in." Outside, protesters chanted. Inside, jaws clenched. Kash Patel, seated in the front row, scribbled notes, his red tie slightly askew. He didn't look up when the judge called recess. He didn't need to. The room wasn't the same. Vault 7 was open, and the silence it had guarded was now on record. When the courtroom reconvened the next morning, a heavier atmosphere replaced yesterday's shock. Even the lights overhead flickered, as if unsure they wanted to witness what was coming next. David James resumed his place on the witness stand. But something had changed. His shoulders were squared, and his voice no longer wavered. He wasn't testifying anymore. He was declaring war. "Cassie disappeared for 3 days in March of 2009, he said. "I was the last person who saw her before she vanished." Gasps rippled across the room. James recounted the night with clinical detail. He had brought Cassie her usual order, Fiji water Roscoe's, and a fresh vial of prescription meds. Diddy was pacing in the hotel suite, visibly agitated. Cassie, he said, looked defeated, like a doll on a shelf someone forgot to wind up. "She asked me if I could take her to the airport," James said. "She said she needed to get out." He never got the chance. Diddy overheard. Within minutes, Bonds had taken her phone, citing security protocol. Cassie was gone by morning. The court fell silent. 3 days, James repeated. No one heard from her. I filed an incident report with the HR rep at Bad Boy. A day later, my account was locked. My benefits vanished. Teeny Garago stood. Objection, speculation, sustained. But it was too late. The seed had been planted. Pam Bondi rose from her seat and displayed a redacted form titled Employee Rights Waiver. The date matched James' last paycheck. Her voice was cold. "This document shows coercion," she said, "not a choice." James leaned into the mic. "They made me sign it at 3 a.m. in a recording studio with the music blasting." He spoke of that night's studio session, a blur of champagne codeine and out-of-place senators. Lindsey Graham had allegedly appeared at the party. He didn't stay long, James clarified, but long enough for the cameras. Vault 7 again. The words hung like fog. Somewhere in the audience, a cough echoed like thunder. James continued. There was a rule: no camera footage ever gets deleted, only moved. That's why the crypt existed. A technician rolled in a hard drive. Bondi confirmed it contained backup surveillance from 2007 through 2015. Footage shows Cassie being taken out of the hotel in a towel, Bondi said. It matches the timeline David described. The courtroom gasped. James dropped another name. Obama wasn't at that party, but his name came up in meetings. There were favors owed, appearances to keep. You don't have to meet the devil to know he's financing the room. Objection sustained, but again the words had done their damage. James detailed how after Cassie reappeared, she was quieter, more compliant. Her music project was shelved. Her interviews were censored. She told me once, "He owns me." The judge asked if James had ever tried to report these events to outside authorities. "I tried," he answered. They laughed. "One guy told me, that's above my clearance." The courtroom shifted. Reporters scribbled. Bloggers typed. David described a trip to Ibiza, where he once witnessed a senator get handed a red envelope on a yacht. "It's not always cash," he said. "Sometimes it's silent." As he closed, James locked eyes with the judge. "I'm not just testifying for Cassie or for me. I'm testifying for the people who didn't come back from these parties." Bondi whispered something to an aide. Kash Patel looked up at last. The courtroom braced. Because now, it wasn't just about Vault 7. It was about everyone it touched. The gallery was full again. Even the reporters who once rolled their eyes during pretrial motions now gripped their pens with knuckles pale as courtroom marble. Word had spread, not just about Vault 7, but about what came next. Today everyone wanted to know, where did the corruption end? David James returned to the stand, wearing the same jacket. He hadn't slept. No one doubted it. But his words didn't need polish. They needed truth, and that he had plenty of. The first name he said silenced everything: Jeffrey Epstein. No dramatic music, no gasp. Just the kind of silence that feels like a bomb landing quietly before detonation. James leaned into the mic. I never met him, but I saw his name, in the crypt, tucked into emails, footage logs, private airstrip manifests, alongside names I wasn't allowed to say. He paused, looked to his right toward Garagos, but now I'm saying them. The folder entered into evidence was labeled Client Vault Access. Bondi opened it for the court. Each page bore initials JMLGMTBO. James explained those weren't artists. Those were senators, judges, one federal agent. All of them connected, some through donations, some through photos. The court grew colder. He described parties where phones were collected at the door. Everyone knew to act like there were no cameras, but there always were. One name repeatedly surfaced in the vault logs: Dan Bongino. He wasn't a guest, James said. He was a watcher, former Secret Service. He knew where to look and when to leave. A video played, not leaked, not grainy. High-definition security footage from Diddy's LA estate with timestamps. There was a hallway, a senator, an underage girl, a manila envelope. The gallery didn't gasp. They couldn't. Their breath was stolen. Bondi paused the tape. I looked at the judge. We've confirmed the footage is authentic. The identity of the girl is under protection, James resumed. People think Hollywood's dirty. But Diddy didn't just host parties. He built stages where blackmail was scripted and contracts were signed with silence. He pointed at Garagos again. You defended him. You weren't just a lawyer, you were a collector. You gathered signatures, hush agreements, and when that didn't work, you handed out threats. Garagos objected. The judge let it land. James told of a night in Saint-Tropez where a young woman overdosed. She didn't die, but she was flown out on a private jet by morning and her name was erased from logs. We were told she never existed, but I have her photo. Her necklace, I kept it, because someone had to remember her. Bondi nodded. Admissible. The next segment shook even hardened reporters. James described a ritual called the Gauntlet. It was what Diddy made some new staff go through. You'd be blindfolded, asked to deliver something upstairs. You'd hear things, cries, moans, laughter, then a test, would you ask questions or just leave? He didn't say what he heard, but his silence said enough. James also confirmed audio recordings. One night, a senator's voice came through on the wire, drunk bragging about a defense contract being rerouted through a fake shell company. Diddy laughed, said, "Now that's how you party." The name of that senator was Mitch McConnell. At that point, a few in the gallery stood up. The judge called for silence. Kash Patel, now consulting on federal oversight, whispered to Bondi. She nodded. Another clip rolled. This time a clip from a party labeled Black Tie Vault Access Only. There were 12 men, 2 teens, 1 red folder. The faces were pixelated, except one, Diddy. He looked directly into the camera. "Playboy, if you see this," he said, "it means you broke the code, so now we'll break you." James didn't flinch. "I've already been broken. What's left is testimony." He told of how during a 2010 party, a shipment of drugs arrived late. Diddy flew into a rage. "He grabbed me by the collar," James said. "Told me he'd hang my body on the gate like a flag." Security intervened, not to help, to erase. The footage was gone, but not the memory. Bondi played the only surviving clip, a phone call from Bonds to an unnamed fixer. "Get the footage. If you can't get it, get the guy." James nodded. I was the guy. And then came the final reveal of the day. A notarized document hidden in a private server showed Diddy's private foundation transferred $2.3 million to a lobbying firm weeks after Vault 7 was first built. That firm had connections to a PC-1, tied to legislation that had mysteriously blocked several federal investigations. Coincidence, James asked. Or strategy, Bondi smiled. The FBI will decide. As James stepped down for recess, the audience didn't applaud. They stared, because now the kingdom wasn't just corrupt. It was crumbling. As court resumed, there was no denying it, something monumental had shifted. A line had been crossed, not in testimony, but in national consciousness. The press gallery was no longer just observers. They were on alert fingers, poised to publish history in real time. Every seat was filled. Security was doubled. The courthouse was no longer just a building. It was the battlefield. David James took the stand once more. This time the prosecution allowed him to bring something. A worn briefcase. "This," he said, unlocking it, "is the only reason I'm alive." Inside were flash drives. Dozens. Labeled not with dates, but with code names. Nightingale, Monarch, Helix. One label, however, made everyone freeze. Obama 15, James clarified. "It's not proof of wrongdoing, but it is proof of association." That's how they kept everyone compliant. Ambiguity, wrapped in implication. He held up a drive, inserted it. The screen flickered. A series of text exchanges rolled across the screen. Encrypted at first, then decoded by federal analysts. Names redacted. But the context is clear. Political favors, private flights, non-disclosure settlements. This is what Vault 7 controlled. Not just secrets, but behavior. The room leaned forward. Pam Bondi pulled out another exhibit, a torn page, from what appeared to be a spiral notebook. Handwritten notes signed at the bottom by someone with the initials SC, the same signature that had once appeared in entertainment contracts from Bad Boy Entertainment. Sean Combs, the judge asked. Bondi nodded, confirmed by forensic handwriting analysts. The note read, "2 left Congress, 1 flipped judge. If DJ speaks, push button B, SC." James explained button B. It was code for destroying material, wiping servers, paying off third-party hackers to go in and erase systems. I heard it referenced multiple times. Then he paused. But one time I saw it activated. In a chilling recount, he described how a whistleblower from within the IRS had been silenced. He was ready to release details about tax shelters linked to Diddy's charity funnels. I met him once. We had lunch in Queens. A week later, he was found dead, ruled as heart failure. James looked down. He was 33. The gallery remained silent, but a few covered their mouths. Then came the witness the defense had tried to keep off the record. A former security operative known only as Rhino took the stand. He had worked for Combs for 7 years. His voice was deep measured. "I burned tapes. I erased logs. I was the eraser, but I kept one." Bondi handed him a device. The screen blinked on. Footage played. A woman bound, her face pixelated. Diddy's voice was heard distorted by bass-heavy music. "Say you'll be quiet." Silence. "Say it." Then a slap, followed by laughter. The judge immediately stopped the tape. Rhino looked up. "That's why I quit." James confirmed the timeline. He was there the day Rhino disappeared. They told us he ran off with money, but I knew. You don't run from men like that, you vanish. The prosecution tied the incident to a sealed civil suit filed in 2011. The plaintiff had accepted a settlement. Her identity was still protected. But the footage aligned. "That's not a party," Bondi said. "That's evidence." Next came financials. A forensic accountant presented a web of shell companies, many tied to the Diddy Foundation, but others indirectly linked to Garagos's own legal trust. Money moved in circles, the accountant explained, but it always ended up serving one purpose: silence. Emails showed judges being invited to retreats in the Caribbean, flights paid by third parties, spa treatments, NDAs signed before tickets were booked. James recognized one judge. He ruled in favor of Combs in 2013. I delivered his wine basket the night before. The tension broke only when the final exhibit played. A child's voice. It was a voicemail. Left on a burner phone James had once hidden inside a duffel bag. "Mr. James, I don't know if you remember me, but my mom said to call you if anything happened. She didn't come home. The room fell apart." Bondi ended the day's session early. No one spoke as they left, because it was no longer about Diddy. It was about every name in that crypt. The next morning, security tripled. Metal detectors buzzed at every doorway. Federal agents stood shoulder to shoulder, badges gleaming beneath dark jackets. They weren't just there for show. There were rumors, anonymous threats. Black SUVs circling the courthouse reporters offered bribes to stay quiet. But the court wasn't closing its doors. Not today. Judge Halberd entered first, flanked by 2 marshals. His gavel dropped. "We will proceed." David James re-entered the courtroom, but this time he didn't take the witness stand. He stood beside Pam Bondi. He was done being questioned. He was now part of the prosecution. Bondi nodded to the technician. "Play the Cassie Vault." The lights dimmed. The screen lit up with surveillance footage, this time from a hidden room beneath Combs' New Jersey estate. The feed was time-stamped in 2012. In the video, Cassie sat slouched on a velvet chaise. 2 unidentified men hovered nearby. She was silent, her hands clasped, her eyes vacant. This was the beginning of her silence, James whispered. After this, her music stopped. Her interviews were pre-written. Her managers rotated weekly. The footage blurred, cutting away before the moment turned explicit. Bondi clarified that the rest of the video had been sealed due to graphic content, but its implications are admissible. A document followed a notarized release form signed under duress by Cassie waiving royalties in exchange for lifestyle protection. The signature was hers. Confirmed. She sold her voice to survive, Bondi said, then the list. A printed logbook, redacted names, over 200 entries, all tied to Vault 7 access tokens. The list included lobbyists, judges, producers, and 7 sitting members of Congress. The courtroom didn't gasp. It exhaled, slow and terrified. James stepped forward. This is what I carried, in my briefcase, in my mind, in my soul. The judge addressed him. Do you fear for your life? James nodded. I do. But silence was killing me faster. He then described a final confrontation the moment he was fired. It was 2015, a fundraiser at the Waldorf. Diddy handed me a tablet with a checklist of who to speak to, who to hand envelopes to. One name caught my eye, Senator T. I knew that was Tom Tillis. When I asked if this was legal, he laughed and said, only if you get caught, Playboy. Later that night, James was approached by Bonds. You're getting soft, he said. You know what rhymes with tired fired. James tried to leave that night. His car was gone. His hotel room was canceled. Within 48 hours, he had no job, no insurance, and no access to his own records. He went dark. Until now. Then came the final testimony of the day, Dan Bongino. He entered under subpoena looking unshaken. I was in the Secret Service. I saw powerful people doing things that would destroy the public if they knew. But I didn't report them because that wasn't my job. My job was to protect. Bondi pounced. Protect who? Bongino hesitated. Sometimes it was the president. Sometimes it was the illusion of America. Did you ever attend Vault 7 parties? I attended briefings. I observed. I advised. Bondi pressed. Did you see abuse? Bongino nodded slowly. I did. Did you report it? No. The silence was deafening. Why not? Bongino looked toward the back of the room, because anyone who did vanished. Then came his bombshell. I saw a list in 2014 labeled fail-safes. Sociardai. It had backup recordings, hidden accounts, locations of assets. If anything ever leaked, Combs could trigger a sequence that would ruin half of D.C. Bondi asked, is that list real? Bongino's voice cracked. I think it still is. The judge recessed for the day, but no one moved. They sat frozen in the weight of what they had heard. Outside, protesters had gathered. Some held signs that read, "Protect the whistleblowers." Others chanted, "Where's the vault back inside?" Bondi looked at James. We have one last witness tomorrow. James asked, who? She said the one who built Vault 7, and with that the court adjourned. Because tomorrow wouldn't just be the end of a trial, it would be the beginning of a reckoning. Morning broke under a gray sky. Protesters were still outside the courthouse now. Triple in size, their signs sharper, louder. News choppers hovered like vultures over a battlefield. Everyone knew what today meant. The one who built Vault 7 was about to speak. His name wasn't on any official list. He entered through a side door escorted by federal agents. He wore no suit, only a plain hoodie and cracked glasses. His name was Elias Quaid, former NSA contractor, known in cybersecurity forums as Lockjaw. Pam Bondi addressed the court. Elias Quaid was contracted through a third-party security firm in 2009. His task, digital asset protection. His mission to build a system that could destroy reputations in seconds. Quaid stepped to the stand. His voice was calm, almost too calm. They wanted leverage, he said. Combs didn't just want to party, he wanted to own the people at the party. That's where Vault 7 came in. He explained the architecture, a decentralized mirror server farm, multiple data vaults across New York, Miami, and offshore. Footage, messages, documents. Nothing deleted, everything categorized. Blackmail by design, he said. Did you know who would be targeted? Bondi asked. Quaid nodded. Judges, senators, artists, even presidential advisors. A moment of silence passed. Why did you come forward now? Quaid sighed. Because the fail-safes failed. He described an attempted data wipe in 2023. It was launched from a terminal at Combs' LA property. Someone tried to activate button B. I blocked it. Why? Because there were kids in the videos. The gallery stirred. The judge inhaled sharply. Quaid held up a drive. This is the last Vault 7 mirror. I kept it hidden inside a Faraday cage for 5 years. Bondi motioned to the technician. The court watched as a single folder opened. Vault 7 Final Integrity Check. Confidential, flagged content, HVT. Pam Bondi didn't show the footage. She only showed the metadata. One name on the file shocked the room. G. Maxwell. Yes, Quaid confirmed. It's connected to Epstein's ecosystem. David James stood up without permission. That's what we risked everything for, he said. That's what they didn't want us to see. The judge ordered the contents sealed pending federal review, but the damage was done. The room stood still for one last exchange. Pam Bondi turned to Quaid. Do you believe this can ever be undone? Quaid looked out toward the public seats at David James, at the jurors. No, he said, but it can be exposed. Bondi rested her case. The judge addressed the jury. Deliberation will begin tomorrow, but outside justice had already begun to take its shape in chants, in headlines, in the eyes of the next whistleblower, watching it all unfold.